Hi there everyone. Have you ever taken one of those panoramic pictures with your phone? You see tourists doing it all the time. Were you doing that? Making those big long pictures? How did that all start? Who first thought of that? Today we're going to find out. We're at the University of Edinburgh. We're at the Centre for Research Collections, and librarian Elizabeth is going to tell us about a very important man in this field.
His name is Robert Barker. He was an Irish artist who apparently gone bankrupt in Ireland, so ran away to Scotland, where he was teaching art, and significantly he was teaching perspective. And one fine day, sitting on the top of Carlton Hill, looking at the view...
A wonderful view over Edinburgh.
A wonderful view over Edinburgh.
Yes.
He had the bright idea of manipulating the way you painted the view so that you could walk inside it.
Right.
VR.
Okay. And here it is.
This is his, or some version of his first attempt.
Yeah.
So this is from the top of Carlton Hill. It's 180 degrees, looking west, basically.
Now, for people who aren't very familiar with Edinburgh, this is obviously quite some time ago. This is 1792.
This is 1792. He actually must have done this in about 1786, 1787, something like that. Because
Edinburgh's such a historic city, there are a few landmarks here that people may still recognise.
Yes. We've got the castle.
Of course.
Up there, the obvious bit. You've got the top of St Giles's, the cathedral. And then coming back to your right, we've got the beginnings of the Edinburgh New Town, which is in the middle of happening at this point. That's Princes Street.
There's Princes Street, okay.
Yep.
Very famous street. Looks a bit different now.
It does and it doesn't. It's all full of buses. That building with the sort of the domey tops just by your finger, that's actually Register House, which is still there. And then just across the road from it now, there's an enormous hotel and Waverly railway station, which is actually now under that bridge with the three arches that you can see there, because they've got to the stage of draining what was called the Nor Loch, which was a lake.
Yep.
But they haven't done anything else with it.
So at this point in history, they've just taken away the water and it's a big basin, really, isn't it?
Yes, and they've built the bridge across the top of it, taking it across, levelling it up with the old town. But they haven't really done anything else.
What I like most, for what it's worth, are the tiny little things like the grazing sheep, and you pointed out something...
Yeah, so down there, they're obviously bleaching linen.
Got walkers and people out, animals grazing. Something like this doesn't seem that groundbreaking to us now, but at the time this was blowing people's minds.
Yes, and this actually still does, because although it looks just like a unrolled picture, actually this is a proper perspective, and it's intended to be viewed with it curved round into a semicircle. So the perspective on this, if you look at it flat, is really skew with. So this bit is the actual top of Carlton Hill, which would be sort of at your feet.
Okay.
The observatory that's still there. But the significant bit that gives it its shape, or doesn't give it its shape, is this road, which is Leith Walk, going all the way. So that little town is Leith, which then was completely separate from Edinburgh and remained proud of being completely separate from Edinburgh right into the 20th century. But to anybody who knows this, that is really, really, really confusing. I think he worked out that if he painted it as a series of separate frames on the same strip, and apparently he had a frame or something so that he knew that he was painting the right bit and it would all join up, and so that he'd got the perspective right within each section, he worked out then that you could curve it round, and he had the makings of a money-making enterprise.
All right, well, show me this then. This is an interesting next step. What have we got here?
So the next step, he goes and takes out a patent on it. This is, as I understand it, the application for the patent, which has been signed by George III.
The King?
The King, yep.
There's not some flunky in a patent office.
Don't think so. I think that's the actual signature.
Okay.
This doesn't tell you anything really very much about what Barker had done or was doing or anything. It just rambles on in a slightly vague fashion about his invention. So
he thinks he's onto a moneymaker here.
Yes.
He wants to protect it.
Yes.
But in terms of how he makes the money, we've got something else to show you.
Yeah, the good bit. So this is a plan of Barker's Rotunda in Leicester Square in London.
So this is basically the place he builds to display these works he's doing. And they're a lot bigger than that one we just
They're an awful lot bigger than that one. I think he had a temporary building somewhere in London before he got Robert Mitchell, the architect, to design this for him. The building itself is still there. It's now a church in Leicester Square in London. Okay. And it was called the Panorama.
So obviously looking here on this sort of cross section, it doesn't look like a circular building, but these pictures that are on the wall are curved.
Yes, and so we're just seeing as much as they can depict.
And these people that we see depicted here are sort of in the centre of it, and it's surrounding them.
Yes, that's right. So they're in the viewing gallery. I gather that there were steps that came up the middle. So certainly for this one, you walked up into the middle of it.
Oh yeah, amazing. And these displays, these views that people could enjoy, he would change from time to time?
Yes, I think it sounds as though a bit like theatre shows they ran for a season. These are all hand-painted.
Right.
He very rapidly got his youngest son onto doing this. They actually went out on location and got very, very detailed drawings.
Right.
And his son in particular travelled, all the way around the known world pretty much.
You and I were trying to figure out what these views are. We're not totally sure, but what are our guesses, do you think?
Our guess is, because he has two galleries in here, so there's a big downstairs one and there's a smaller one upstairs. I think that smaller one upstairs, it might be Constantinople or it might be Venice.
People watching, if they can figure it out,
somebody probably
leave
will.
a comment. So this is big business for him now. People are coming, they're seeing these works, and they don't just come and look at the paintings, they actually get these guidebooks when they visit.
Yes, you have to buy the guidebook.
You have to?
Oh yeah, you have to buy. Well, I don't know that he made the, but
it's recommended.
Yes, you have the guidebook.
We've got a couple of guidebooks.
Got some guidebooks.
What ones have you got? You've got two here.
We've got Rome here, which is probably a slightly duller one. So this is Henry Aston Barker. So this is a bit later. This is his son.
So if I was there the week that Rome was on show, I would get this guidebook, and at the start there's all sorts of explanatory material, which is all, what you'd expect in a guidebook.
But it's guiding you round it.
And there's also this fold-out map, which has the round picture and everything's labelled on it.
Yeah, but the perspective on this one is not the same as the perspective on the actual strip one. This one's designed to be sort of seen exploded, a bit like they quite often did architectural drawings.
It's great these guidebooks still exist, you've still got them.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, and what's over here? This is another one.
These two, as I understand it, are the younger Barker, Henry Aston Barker. As I understand it, these are his pension plan. And I gather he retired young on the profits.
So this is a depiction of the site where the Battle of Waterloo took place.
This is 1816, so this is only sort of a year after it happened. But this one is the site of the Battle of Waterloo, and this is a big reproduction, again in pieces.
So this originally, again, would have been a painting, but here it's been turned into an etching. And by the way, people, this is much bigger than what Elizabeth is showing us now. There are many other pages.
There's 8 sheets for this, and I think I ran out of table at about 5.
We haven't got enough table to show you all of it, but you get the idea.
Because this was a proper 360 degrees.
Because this battle was so recent.
Yes, this is current affairs, so.
This is a chance to feel what it's like to stand in the middle of the battlefield.
Yes, so for an immersive experience, it must have been really spectacular.
And this would have been in colour and all sorts. And,
and set dressed in the foreground to make it look like you were there. So, in cityscapes, they'd put sort of chimney pots and things.
Yeah.
So that you didn't immediately see that you were on a gallery and it was a painting in front of you.
So we can't show you the colour version, but what we can show you is a guidebook from possibly another Waterloo display that they had at the Rotunda.
Yes.
So here's the Battle of Waterloo guidebook, with all your descriptions and things you could want. And then most importantly, at the back, again, we have the fold-out interpretation of it, so you can look at it and then cross-reference what you're looking at.
Yes, it's giving you the description underneath of what's going on.
I mean, this is clearly a different painting to the big one we've got laid out here, because in this one, they've transposed onto it battles and horses and fighting and I mean, did they have dry ice in those days? Because you can imagine that. But that's the way they were thinking. So to close the circle, so to speak, we're going to have a look at another Barker classic, and again it's going to be like that view of Edinburgh, but a slightly different one.
So this one is a much more elaborate way of selling a reproduction of that view. It's all in tissue paper.
We carefully show people.
Very, very fragile.
So these are 4 panels of the Edinburgh view, again from Carlton Hill.
So this again, it's been etched, but with an awful lot more care taken over it.
And again,
a much more expensive process. It's actually an aquatint. It's a process that lets you put sort of gradations of shading in.
There we go. Do we know what happened to him? Did he retire a multimillionaire?
Robert Barker himself died relatively young. His son retired. I don't know about a multi-millionaire, but he was doing all right and retired to the country on it. The actual Rotunda carried on running for a good many decades after they'd finished with it. Actually beyond Robert Aston Barker's lifetime. So even if he'd handed it on to somebody else, it must have been sold on eventually.
There's one last thing I want to do, if it's all right with you. I want to take a panorama picture.
Of the panorama?
Of the panorama.
Have a go.
Here we go. You ready? Oh, look, see, I'm not as good at it as Barker. I can't keep it straight. Oh, I've made a mess of it.
Well, he had an easel.
That's terrible. Why not get hands-on or gloves on with Mel Science, today's episode sponsor? I'm doing some Mel chemistry and experiment with tin and electricity. It's so much fun. Where was Mel Science when I was a kid? The idea of a new kit on my doorstep every month would have blown my mind. Everything's in the box, including a starter kit of lab and safety gear. It's elegantly designed, very user-friendly. Now, time to see how I did. That is amazing. Here's a more pro version from the people at Mel Science. Take a look at their website, subscribe to the boxes, get them delivered to your home every month. They do physics too, by the way. And here's a little bonus, you'll get 50% off your first subscription box by using the promo code Objectivity50. There's more information and links in the video description. And look, I'm not gonna lie, I'm chuffed with my results. See in time-lapse this kind of pulsing look to the trails? I want to investigate this further. One of the things about the Royal Albert Hall, despite being like a modern venue now with all modern concerts and events, because it's so old, it still has a lot of these original features hidden away, sometimes very out in public. And we're now going to go for a little walk and have a look at some of these things we've just been talking about. This is proper exciting now. We're going all the way up to the roof. This is somewhere you definitely don't normally see.